All right, when we last left urbanization, we were talking about the tenement housing and the poor conditions, and then also political machines. Now we're going to talk about a group of people who want to fix these problems, right? To prevent something from happening. Now, the first thing we have is actually run by a group of women, and this is kind of just insane because women don't even have the right to vote at this point. Yet women also have a soft spot for helping people out, specifically children and different things like that. This is called a settlement house. A settlement house is where you'd bring poor immigrants in and you would teach them skills. They love bringing in children and teaching them how to read and write English so they would be more productive in their schools. Okay? But there was other things that will happen there. Now, the first settlement house, if you will, was set up by this woman, Jane Addams. It was called the Hull House, Hull, and it was in Chicago, and very, very famous. And so the idea was to, again, help these people. So she's there. Now, the settlement house is part of a much broader movement, and that movement is called the social gospel movement. Here it is, right? So Jane Addams was in there with the Hull House, and there were many things there. Now, if you look right here, it tells you what's going on here. The social gospel movement was the 19th century. When we say century, that basically means going 100 back, right? 1800s. Movement based on the belief of Christians have a responsibility to help improve working conditions and alleviate or fix poverty. Many reformers responded to the call to help the urban poor. A few established settlement houses. And so there they are, settlement houses, community centers in slums, neighborhoods that provided assistance to people in areas, especially immigrants. And then we have Jane Addams, correct? So, again, social gospel. Here it is, right? Christians have a responsibility to improve working conditions and alleviate or fix poverty. And there are two men we're going to talk about in the social gospel movement. Now, the first one is right here, Charles Sheldon. And he wrote a book called In His Steps. Now, who is the his? His is capitalized. He's talking about Jesus. It's basically what would Jesus do to fix these problems and how he would solve poverty. And so that's a very important thing of that. I'm trying not to go too Christian here, but this is our history, so you have to bear with me, all right? Now, the second man, Walter Rauschenbusch, go ahead and say that 3 times fast. I'll wait. Okay. Now, he said, whoever sets any bounds for the reconstructive power of the religious life over social denies the faith of the master being God. In other words, there should be no reconstructive limits set on these things. And so Walter Rauschenbusch wants to fix the tenements. He wants to fix these horrible things. And Rauschenbusch actually lived in that daredevil area of what was called Hell's Kitchen. And it's this part of New York, and it was basically just gang infested. Everyone had this, the political machines running rampant, and so there you are with that, right? Now, the biggest way to fix poverty is to create money, correct? In New York, they started something called the Ashcan School of Art. The Ashcan School of Art was a poor-based social gospel, if you will, kind of art movement where they're going to give people the opportunity to come in and do these things, correct? Now the last thing we have going on here, they actually created what are called cultural enclaves. An enclave is a cove, and it's basically like this. So this little enclave here, for example, might be Italian. Everybody in that building was Italian. And everybody in this building is maybe Russian, and back here maybe Japanese. And so everybody had their little clique, if you will, based on community. Now the problem with that is they're not acclimating and liking each other. In essence, they are going by separate but equal. But of course, separate but equal was law for African Americans and whites, but also in these cities. And so there we have those things there. So what I want you to do here, I want you to talk about the living and working conditions, and then I also want you to compare the settlement house and the social gospel movement. I also want you to think about social gospel in the context of what we talked about last chapter of gospel of wealth. How does that factor into these things? All right, and we have one more video on this, and we'll look at that, and it's kind of cool stuff. All right.